Okay, very good. All right, if I could ask those who are here for the swearing in of Jennifer Adair to approach the podium, please. So Judge James Green is here with us. Thank you for being here. And Jennifer Adair is here, and she's going to be sworn in, and she has some family and friends with her. So I'd like to turn it over to you, Judge Green.
Thank you. Good evening to the members, the current and future member of the Columbus School Board. It is with great pleasure that I am here to administer the oath of office to the newest board member, Ms. Jennifer Adair. And I just wanted to say to the board members and to the audience that you are getting what I consider to be a superstar. I met Jennifer after her junior year in high school. We had her placed through a program called the Summer Leadership Intern Program, and we placed her with a local law firm. And it was during the early years of the program when the law firms did not really want high school kids working in their firms, dealing with things like client confidences and so forth. And she went into that firm, represented the program very well, and we knew then things to come in the future. And we have with us kind of a slip reunion. Dwight Gross, who was one of the creators of the program and was one of her teachers at Centennial High School. We have attorney Vicki Jenkins, another founder of the program. We have Donna Sweet, who's like an all-everything person with the Columbus Bar Association, and she worked with us very closely with the program. So I'm really tickled that they were able to come out tonight and join her in this celebration, and I'll have her introduce our other guests at the appropriate time. So, Ms. Adair, we have a mission statement here at Columbus City Schools, and it goes something like this. Each student is highly educated, prepared for leadership and service, and empowered for success as a citizen in a global community. Now, I don't believe that one needs to be a product of the Columbus Public Schools to be an effective school board member. I don't think they need to have children in the Columbus Public School District to be an effective school board member. But it just so happens in this case, you get both. And I think her dedication and commitment to this community, to this district, the entire community is going to benefit. So Ms. Adair, if you would be so kind as to raise your right hand, and if you'll repeat after me. I, Jennifer A. Adair,
I, Jennifer Ann Adair,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge my duties
discharge my duties
as a member of the Columbus Board of Education
as a member of the Columbus Board of Education
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
and in accordance
and in accordance
with the laws now in effect,
now,
with the laws
with
now
the
in effect,
laws now in effect
and hereafter to be enacted.
and hereafter to be enacted.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I want to thank my colleagues on this school board for giving me this opportunity to serve alongside with you. I am so honored to have Judge Green here. He really told our story and the story of the spirit and success of this district. When I was 17 years old, I had a fabulous teacher, Dwight Gross, who introduced me to education in civics and got me involved at a local level on the Northwest Civic Association and told me to get involved in this program called SLIP. And I filled out the application, and it allowed me to meet these amazing people that Judge Green introduced you to. And I became a professional, I became an attorney, and then my journey led me right back around to these same exact people, becoming an advisor and attorney for Vicki at the Department of Developmental Disabilities when I served as an assistant attorney general, so she was a client. And then working with Donna at the CBA when I served on the Columbus Board, the Columbus Bar Association's Board of Governors. I always kept my dedication to our Columbus City schools and spent a lot of time and a lot of effort in the classroom. My mom is here today, who is a teacher at Eastgate, teaching a lot of 4th and now 5th. So she's picked up a grade. She's behind me. And of course, my daughter. My daughter is a student at Mays, and I work with them. I'm the box top mom. And then my dad is here, who also was very instrumental in me becoming a leader, and I appreciate them very much, that family support. I also have some additional adoptive family here. So Sheila Gartland and her daughter Meg, who I've known Meg since before she was born, and I'm so proud of Meg, but they are my adoptive family. Sheila is an attorney at Voorhees, Sater Seymour Peace here in Columbus. She's a partner, and she is an amazing person and was always there to support me. And then I have others who are past colleagues and supporters of initiatives. And we have Kathy Bachbrader from the Attorney General's office and Natalie Kirk, who is with the Department of Developmental Disabilities. Did I get everybody? Oh, and Lindsay Ellis, who is an amazing attorney in the area. We both served as past president on the John Marshall Langston Bar Association. And then I have Tracy Carter, who I actually met doing another program that works with our students called Future Possibilities. She's no longer with that program, but that's how we met. And it's an amazing program that is in several of our elementary schools, helping kids meet and make their goals. And so, as you can see, I have a rich history and a rich support system around the school district. I am your CCS success. I am your student. I am your parent. And now I am so excited to be your advocate. So thank you so much, and I look forward to taking my seat with you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Adair, and thank you to all of you who are here to celebrate her success and her joining the school board. And why don't we take a quick group photo? Do we have a minute for that? Yeah. Okay. Would you come right up here? Whoever you'd like to have in the photo.
You want to come back here with me at photo ball? I'd say, totally. You got a spot right there for you. How you doing, buddy?
Okay, we're gonna do a few of them here, so. Perfect, thank you.
How are you, sir? Good to see you. How's it
Board Member Adair, I'll ask you to take your seat as soon as you are prepared. Board Member Adair, welcome. And with that, I'd like to call our meeting to order and ask the treasurer to call the roll.
Present.
Present.
Mr. Brown? Here. Vice President Cole? Here. Ms. Gibbs?
Here.
Mr. Ragland? Here. Ms. Reyes?
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer, and I would like to ask our newest member, Board Member Adair, and her daughter Mila to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask that everyone be upstanding.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mila. All right, if you'll allow me, I'll briefly read through our agenda so that we know the work before us this evening. After we review and adopt the agenda, we have a resolution recognizing this week as Public Education Week. And I do believe Bill Phillips is here in the audience with us, and he'll say a few words. We will then take public comment. We do have 4 speakers who have signed up to address the board this evening. We will then hear from our direct reports. With their executive reports, we'll then take up our consent agenda, after which we will hear announcements and points of pride, after which we will recess into executive session. Is there a motion that we adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. All right. Our next item is resolution recognizing this week as Public Education Week. I'd like to ask Mr. Bill Phillips to approach the podium. Mr. Phillips is with the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy of School Funding. You all know Mr. Phillips. I'll ask him to say a few brief words. I know he only has a few minutes with us, but I'd like to read the resolution, ask for a second, and then we'll ask Mr. Phillips to address us. This resolution recognizes January 20th through 26th, 2019 as Public Education Week. And I'll just hit some highlights here. Whereas the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, one of the key documents in the founding of the state of Ohio, states in part that religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Whereas Article 6, Section 2 of the Ohio Constitution states in part that the General Assembly shall make such provisions by taxation or otherwise as with the income arising from the school trust fund will secure a thorough and efficient system of common schools throughout the state, thus demonstrating the commitment of the citizens of the state of Ohio towards the provision of a public education. And whereas the citizens of the city of Columbus have supported public education since the establishment of the school district, now known as Columbus City Schools, was established in 1845. And whereas traditional public school districts in Ohio serve more than 1.8 million students and employ more than 245,000 Ohioans full-time. And whereas all children in Ohio should have access to the highest quality education possible, and whereas Ohio citizens recognize the important role that an effective education plays in preparing all students to be successful adults, and whereas quality education is critically important to the economic vitality of the Buckeye State, and whereas the public education not only helps to diversify our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community, and whereas Ohio has many high-quality teaching professionals who are committed to educating our children, and whereas public education is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, and organizations to raise awareness of the need for effective public schools, now, therefore, be it resolved that the Columbus City Schools Board of Education hereby recognizes January 20th through 26th, 2019 as Public Education Week, and call this observance to the attention of all Ohioans. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Phillips, we appreciate you taking the time to be here this evening. We know that you are part of Public Education Partners, and that is a group that called for school districts to adopt a resolution similar to the one that we plan to adopt this evening. So I'll give you a few minutes to address the board.
Mr. Baker, members of the board.
I certainly appreciate being here
this evening. As you indicated, I'm the Executive Director of the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy of School Funding, but I'm here tonight representing the Public Education Partners, which is a citizen advocacy group for public education. Now, Dr. Stanford and I go back 100 years or so, and some of you in the room here, we go back a long ways, and I think if my math is correct, this is my 61st year dealing with public education. I started teaching in 1958. That was before some of you were born, or maybe your parents were born. But I've been with public education for a lot of years. I sincerely believe in public education, and as a member of the board of Public Education Partners, or PEP as we call it in short, I am pleased to be here representing that particular organization. The Public Education Partners is a citizens group. Although I'm on the board, most of the rest of the people are not affiliated with public education in terms of receiving a paycheck. But in connection with Public Education Week celebration, we have on Thursday morning at 11 o'clock, we have an event in the State House atrium, and there will be a number of student groups that will be making presentations or will be exhibiting what's great about public education, and some of those students are from the Columbus District. So we would appreciate any of you who are interested in being there at 11 o'clock. It's just a short program, from 11 to 12:30. We would appreciate your attendance and celebrate with us what great things public school youngsters are doing today in our great public school system. So thank you for the invitation. I do have a few flyers that I'll see that some of you receive, and you can run off more if you like, but I'd like to see some of you there at 11 o'clock on Thursday at the State House atrium. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Be glad to respond to any questions if anyone has any.
Any questions for Mr. Phillis? Mr. Brown?
Just want to say thank you again for what you're working on now, and thank you for the work over all these many years. I know you and I first met during my first round of school board service up in the Cleveland area, and it's good to see you still at it.
Thank you. Well, we were both young at that time.
Yes, we were. Yes, we were, and you know, the adequacy and equity issues continue to be incredibly important. You know, I think we've made some progress, maybe at least in awareness of the issues, but financing public schools still has a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. There are 1,200 new school buildings across this state, including some in the city, that are a result of some of the efforts that we jointly put forward. Mm-hmm. I think we have a great opportunity this year with the 133rd General Assembly to get some movement on the train to get to a constitutional system. The Cupp-Patterson report is coming out, and they've done good work. I noticed some good statements by the governor, the new governor, talking about his interest in education. The Speaker of the House, the new Speaker of the House, has made education a priority. So I think we're going to be in line for some good things to happen in terms of maybe bringing some fruition to some past efforts that all of you have been engaged in. So,
Colleagues? All right, Mr. Phillis, I'd like to ask you to come up. We'll take a photo, and we will present you with a copy of the resolution. Come right on up. Thank you, Mr. Phillis, for your years of service to public education. We need more like you, a lot more like you. Let's move on then to, I beg your pardon. Oh, good call, Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other discussion, yes, please.
President Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
Ms. Adair.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. And why don't we have a round of applause for Mr. Phillis and for public education. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to public comment. We do have 4 speakers this evening. Each speaker is given 4 minutes to address the board. I'll call your name, state your topic, and board action requested, and I'll ask you to come to the podium. Our first speaker is Shayna Rivers. Topic, high tolerance for disruptive behavior. Board action requested, come up with standard discipline policies and enforce them. Ms. Rivers, good evening.
Good evening. So I have good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bockhart, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. So I come to you this evening as a concerned parent. I've heard the mission statement read this evening, and it mentioned a couple of times the highest quality education possible. And I wish I could stand in front of you this evening with a lot of confidence saying that I believe my students are receiving the highest quality education possible. But at this time, I do not feel that. And one of the reasons I'm here to speak this evening is why such a high tolerance for disruptive behavior in our classrooms. Why do we tolerate the disruptive and disrespectful behavior in our children's learning environment? Imagine sitting here today as I'm speaking to you. The information I'm giving to you, your future is dependent on it. You're being asked to sit here, take in all that you can while I'm sitting here presenting to you. Then all of a sudden, there's a disruption here. You have someone flipping their desk, throwing books, cussing, hitting teachers, hitting other students, and very little is being done about it. Let's say that happened here today. I might be able to call in a gentleman on the back to assist me with that individual and remove them from this setting so we can move forward. Us as adults, it might take us a couple of minutes to get back on track, but we'll eventually get back on track and move forward. But what about our teachers who don't have no one to call on? What about our teachers who are being asked by their administrators to call them less, to deal with the problems themselves? We have students remaining in the classrooms that are disrupting the majority day after day after day. It's unacceptable. Why do we tolerate it? Why isn't there some kind of repercussions for behaviors? Because in real life, there is. We have teachers that are overworked, underpaid, outnumbered, and they have no voice. And now they don't have anyone to stand behind them. And I'm counting on that teacher to teach my kids what's best. Give them the tools that they need to be successful adults. And I'm not talking about just graduating high school, because my expectations for my children is to move on to college. I want my child to have that high quality education, but I think the key word is possible. We put them in an environment where they're learning what they can with the environment that they have. So to sum it up, I think what we're tolerating is we're not helping anyone. We're not helping the teachers. They're not qualified to be psychologists, psychiatrists, behavior specialists, or disciplinary people. We're not helping the students who are there to learn. And we certainly aren't helping the students whose behavior we're tolerating, because We tolerate that same behavior. We know who the students are, you know who their name, and you hear their students' names over and over again. The students that are there to learn would become collateral damage, is what I call it. There's nothing like hearing your student who's there to learn talk about they lose their recess for the week. They looking forward to music on Wednesday, and boy, we only got 10 minutes of music because so-and-so was back at it again, now we gotta sit in silence. That's not fair. Something needs to be done. In addition, and I'm gonna close with this, you're setting the students up, you're accepting that behavior arm from failure. You're giving them the misconception that there's no consequences for their behavior, when the truth is you're transitioning them into a society that has zero tolerance for their behavior. Regardless of where they come from, regardless of why they're acting like that, regardless if it's a mental, behavioral, economical situation, they live in a society where they don't care and it's not tolerated. I want my children to have that highest education possible. And this is just one of the many topics I can sit here and go on and on. We should not tolerate that behavior. What I would like done, you to put a policy in place. I think we all can agree there's some behaviors that just are unacceptable. They need to be laid out and they need to be followed. Spitting, hitting, assaulting, you should go home. If it continues, you go home and you stay home. Ain't nothing like having the person that's in the class disrupting back the next day. I want my son and my kids to have a quality education, and I am counting on you to provide it, as you say in your mission statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rivers. Are there any clarifying questions from my colleagues for Ms. Rivers? Any clarifying questions? Mr. Vice President?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much, ma'am, for coming to us and speaking to us tonight. Have you contacted administration with the district even prior to today? And if so, how were you helped, or how was your situation addressed?
So I'm not sure. It's all I've ever contacted and reached out to was a few of the teachers, and not necessarily to blame them because I know it's higher than them, but I've reached out to the higher up, like the principals and assistant principals, and I've just recently started reaching out to the administrators, probably maybe late last week, and that's when I heard about here, and they told me to come and speak here.
Okay, and had you had the opportunity to speak with anyone and get
No,
some?
I've just sent emails. I haven't had the opportunity to speak to anyone.
Okay, so respectfully, our Chief Academic Officer, Mrs. Alicia Gillison, is right there. She can actually help you with any information that you need to kind of address this situation. She can also give you an idea of what our policies are current. We have several, but they deal with positive behavioral intervention systems. She can explain that to you and give you some idea of what recourse is available for you.
Okay,
I thank you so much for coming out.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
From Ms. Rivers, from Ms. Gibbs.
I want to interrupt with Ms. Gillison. Ms. Rivers, I'm sorry, just what grade are your students in? You don't have to name the school, but what grade?
I have a son who's currently in the system. He's in the 4th grade, but I also had a daughter who was in the 9th grade, but I put her from the district just due to all the issues I was having.
Okay. Thank you so much. And just in addition to our policies, who's also under the leadership of Ms. Gillison, in our Innovation and Reform Committee, we're currently studying our state law. And the state law that just passed in Ohio is that we can no longer suspend students in grades pre-K 3 per state law because of the disproportionate number of students of color that have historically always been suspended. But as a committee and as a district, we're looking at how we provide redirection and how we administer discipline in a more fair, equitable way for all students. And so when they come to 4th grade, it's not a reality check of consequences that they'll know all along what the behaviors we respect. But if you follow that work in our Innovation and Reform, we'll be glad to give you our meeting dates, and we'll take your feedback to our committee, and it will be a rich part of our discussion. So thank you for sharing with the board.
No problem, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rivers. Our next speaker, Donna Jones. Topic, return policy for student cell phone. Board action requested. Consider having a definitive policy on return of cell phones confiscated on a Friday. Ms. Jones, good evening.
Evening. Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer B, Internal Auditor Smith, and members of the board. My name is Donna Jones, and I am a grandparent with 6 children in Columbus City Schools. I have 3 adult daughters that have come through Columbus City Schools, graduated high school, and graduated college. I am and always have been an advocate of Columbus City Schools and keeping our kids in schools. But as parents get busier and parents' lives change, especially adult parents, single parents sometimes, I am coming to you with an issue on your policy on, it is 5136 and the confiscation of devices. There is a situation that has come up within the city schools for 2 grandchildren, unfortunately 2 years apart. And now I realize that there is a gray area on return of cell phones. If a cell phone is confiscated, that's fine. It shouldn't be in the building. It shouldn't be out. I have no problem with that. But when you have administrators and teachers in the same building with the gray area on a Friday to keep a cell phone over the weekend for middle school adults, some of which are transitioning from elementary school, that actually need their cell phone over the weekend or Friday when they get home, is unacceptable. The situation that occurred, once I looked into it, one situation 2 years ago, different mothers, both my daughters. When it came up again this time on a Friday and a mom has to be at work on a Friday evening, there is no reason that an administrator nor teacher should be keeping a phone over the weekend. You are putting kids in danger having their phone over the weekend when mom has not been notified that that phone is going to be kept there. So I'm asking you today, with your policy, to please amend and include language to include return of a communicative device for students. There's nothing there that mentions when it needs to be returned, but when you take it on a Friday, and I understand parents need to come and pick that phone up, please communicate with the parents to make it to the school before you close to pick up a phone, because your child will be left home without communication. Most families don't have landlines anymore. They have no way to communicate, but you think your child is all right. So to not notify a parent that you are keeping a phone over the weekend is totally unacceptable.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. Now, are there any board members? I see Mr. Brown, who chairs the Policy Review Committee. Mr. Brown?
Jones, thank you. Thank you for bringing the matter to our attention. I do chair our Policy Review Committee, and we will take a look at the policy. We will, we've heard you, and we will see what kind of change, if any, needs to be done to the policy, as well as how it's implemented. So thank you for bringing it to us.
You are so welcome.
Other clarifying questions, Mr. Ragland?
Yes. To bridge off of what Board Member Brown has stated, I would like to see some cross-committee cooperation with our Innovation Committee to see who's doing this well with the cell phone policies. It seems to me, I've heard this consistently throughout the district, that we spend an inordinate amount of time dealing with cell phones. Some of the other districts around the state utilize cell phones within their curriculum. And if there can be a look through our Innovation Committee around who's doing this the right way, who's incorporating cell phone use within the classroom to allow students to have access to even more information at their hands. I'd like to have some information from Innovation before we take a look at it on the policy side, because we may be having a better conversation, a more informed conversation, if Innovation can show us the right way to approach this issue.
You, Board Member Ragland. Board Member Gibbs?
Innovation and reform. So I chair innovation and reform, and I really do want to give kudos to our administration and this leadership team who a few years ago adopted a BYOD policy. So we have a bring your own device policy where right now our students can bring cell phones, tablets, and have them introduced into the curriculum and they're able to use them. Not knowing the situation, and I'm sure our team will work with you to get the full details of what happened here, as we don't know those. Our students are allowed to bring them, and you can Google and do quizzes and all of those. So we can look at how other districts are doing them. Our administration did a great look the first time when our students, I believe from, was it Westone or Centennial? They brought it to us and they asked for a BYOD policy, and we passed that policy a few years ago. And what our policy now seeks to do is not override our BYOD, but eliminate distractions. So if a teacher is teaching, you can't do this. And I've walked into classrooms where clearly you're not bringing your own device or your own attention to it. But we do have times when you're able to do it, and it is a critical part of communication, not just with classes, but on communicating with your parents when the bus is late, or making sure you check in to say, I got home safely. And in the areas where we've had students where we couldn't find them and they had electronic devices. So there is a place for it. And it will come not just, and I look forward to the policy review and the administrative work and how innovation can look for it. But it's a partnership between us and parents and students on the way we use them and the appropriate times to use them, which will help us support whatever policies we come up with, but be able to maintain that type of cooperation and learning environment, as we just heard from the last speaker, how we keep that balance in check. So thank you for bringing that, because it is clear.
You're welcome.
I can't think of how many people have a landline,
No.
right? And this is more real time than anything, and it is up to us as education to catch up to this, right? As opposed to demanding the opposite, but it's a full balance of how do we make that happen in an educational setting. So thank you, Board Member Ragland, and I'll work with Board Member Brown if that's okay, President Baker.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms.
And we'll
Gibbs.
revisit the work.
And other clarifying questions? Board Member Adair, have you a clarifying question for the speaker?
Ma'am, hold on a second. Ma'am, come back.
Ms. Jones?
Ms.
one
Jones.
moment.
Ms. Jones, thank you, thank you. I just had a clarifying question about the situation. I did review the policy, and it says that parents are supposed to be notified of the confiscation, and the cell phone is supposed to be returned. So in your circumstance, were you finding that parents were just not being notified?
Not notified on a Friday, and unfortunately, she goes from one job to the next on a Friday. And because the child is involved in activities on Saturday and Sunday, that hampers that also. But there is no policy on how to notify the parents that this phone is going to be gone on the weekend. So unfortunately, when you leave one job on a Friday and go to the next, mom is gone, but they have no communication device to say, hey, my phone is gone. I can't tell you that I made it home. I can't tell you that I'm in the house. And you leave that to neighbors, of course. You know, if you're in a neighborhood where you can go to a neighbor and say, hey, can I use your phone? My phone got taken today. But there has to be something in policy and remove that gray area, because after talking with the administrator, there was no policy on notifying the parent on a Friday afternoon to come and get the phone.
Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Good evening. Our next speaker, Skylar Reed, topic, Columbus Alternative High School, board action requested, would like the board to be open and change the perspective of students at cause. Ms. Reed, good evening. Thank you.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahurik, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. Thank you for having me today. First of all, is my first thing that I would like to say to the board. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Skylar Reed, and I am an advocate for youth. I come from the council, Franklin County Youth Council. Some of you might have heard. The folders that you guys just received are what we do in our mission statement and our goals for FCYC. So I would like to first recite the mission statement is to amplify youth voices throughout Franklin County. And our goals are to encourage youth involvement in the community, build leadership skills, and voice policy ideals and concerns of community youths, such as today, me being here in front of you all. I am a senior at Columbus Alternative High School, and I think that it is my duty to do what Franklin County Youth Council has prepared me for, and to advocate for the students around me, and not just for Columbus Alternative High School students, but for CCS students all across, not just high school, but middle school and elementary schools. So as you guys most likely have heard already, that that COS has been struggling to, we've been wanting and fighting for a new building for a couple of years now, just kind of bringing it up. I'm not sure if you guys have really heard what we've been saying, but I would like to explain a few things that I've gone through. So like I said, I am a senior at COS, and a few things that I've been through in my 4 years of high school there. We've had the water fountain almost fall down on one of the students and almost cause serious injury. We've had bats flying over my head every single year, and rodents running around. And of course, usually rodents are common in a lot of schools, but the fact that we are trying to learn and that it's just very hard and just very, very hard to learn when you have a mice running across the classroom and then everybody's trying to regroup because we're screaming because there's a mouse that just ran across the classroom, like, ew, gross, that's nasty. So we wanted to, secondly, I would like to change your perception of COS, maybe that we whine too much and that we're unappreciative of the things that the board has given us or the city has given us because we are the gym and we should appreciate it. And I wanted to just make sure that you guys don't think that, because we are super appreciative of everything that Columbus has given to us and that the board has done for us in regards to our schooling and things like that. And we have noticed the little changes that have happened, like you guys bandaging up certain places in the school building. But what I'm here today to talk about is we just want a new building, just an entirely new building. And we have been brought to, people have said, well, what about sharing a building with Lyndon McKinley? And I just detest that notion because it takes away the identity of COS. If you put two schools together, it takes away the identity of COS. So to advocate for my fellow students who have had health issues when being at COS because the building is so hot or because the air is weird and the transformer blowing up and not being able to get out because of the smallness of the parking lot and different things like that, we would just like to ask for a new building. So thank you so much for listening to what I have to say.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Reed. We always
course.
appreciate hearing from our students. You did a great job.
Thank you.
And are there any clarifying questions from colleagues? Mr. Vice President?
Thank you so much for coming this evening. Do you serve any leadership role at COS?
I do not serve any leadership roles at COS, but I am affiliated with the civics team at COS, so that is something that I am affiliated with, but I do not serve on an actual team at Columbus Alternative High School.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Ms. Gibbs?
Thank you. So my heart beams with joy. So I thank you so much for coming to share your same sentiments about how hot the school building is. But I'm very concerned and disappointed that someone has shared with you that we think you're whining. The voice of our students are always welcome at this table. They're welcome in our district. They are never burdensome or never tired. Anybody from any of our buildings, whether you had your air conditioner won't turn off or your heat won't turn on, this is the place and these are the people that are here to hear your concerns. And I share with you, and we've shared for a long time, that we are at the limit for patching COS, period. And that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. and we hear your voices. And I don't ever want you to walk around and think that you can't advocate for yourself as our number one customer and our raison d'etre to be, the raison d'etre. You are why we are here. And we've heard you, and I even more appreciate the student voice and perspectives of the ones that are there every single day. I also hold in very high regard the Franklin County Youth Council and all the young people and the great work that you always do in Central Ohio, working with students in Columbus City and across the county and coming here. So I'm very proud of your presentation. You did very well. Know that we are working on this every day. Tomorrow is the work session on facilities. We'll be here at 5:30 to help bring clarity on which direction we're going to give our Dr. Stanford some answers of where, what the information we're seeking so they can come back and bring some solutions. While it's not a fast process, it will be a finished process, because at the end of this, we'll have a better idea of where to go and what to do. So it's not that you're not being heard, it's that the process is moving forward. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you for all the leadership and the support of the Franklin County. She got a whole team here, y'all see them. Franklin County Youth Council and the way they roll, they're always supporting their leaders. Thank you so much for what you do, and trust me, COS is getting a new building.
Thank you so much.
And if there are other members of the Franklin County Youth Council here, or staff or volunteers, please stand and be recognized for your work. Thank you very much. Are there any other clarifying questions for Ms. Reed? Thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you so much for hearing me today.
We appreciate your leadership. Good night. Our next speaker is Laura Kogan. Topic: clarify timeline for moving Dominion Middle School. Board action requested. Clarify when, if Dominion Middle School, what academic year this will be. Ms. Kogan, good evening. Welcome back.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. I am here today to raise two questions related to Dominion Middle School. Number one, clarification on the implementation timeline for the potential move to the North High building. And number two, focusing tomorrow's workshop discussion about the future of the North High building on feasible solutions to resolve DMS's overcrowding issue if the school is not ultimately moved to North High. At the December 18th meeting, Board Member Gibbs asked Dr. Stanford to clarify the timeline of the potential DMS move. It was stated that 1 year was allotted for implementing the move. From my understanding, the Facilities Task Force recommended that the relocation would be completed in time for the 2020-2021 school year. I suspect the original thought was to give the rest of this year and part of next year to prepare for the move, then spend the latter part of next school year with the bulk of the physical moving of items taking place during summer 2020, so the new building would be ready for the students in August of that year. This evening, can you and/or district staff please clarify whether, if the Dominion move is ultimately adopted, the implementation could still occur in the 2020-2021 school year? And if yes, then what is the deadline for the decision to be made for this timeline to still be feasible? At tomorrow's work session, I please ask that you discuss reasonable solutions to address the overcrowding issue if you definitely decide or seriously are considering not moving Dominion. My concern is if the recommendation to move Dominion is not ultimately adopted, it will take years to solve the overcrowding issue. Dominion has been over capacity since at least 2016, and it took a large projected budget deficit to even trigger the conversation. Since we are no longer facing this as an immediate threat, I wouldn't want the DMS overcrowding issue to float into obscurity and have the Dominion staff and administration continue to shoulder the stress and burden of managing an overcrowded school with no end in sight. When you meet tomorrow, I ask that your conversation carefully consider the advantages, disadvantages, and opportunity costs of various options before you. For example, if the board does reject the Dominion move and instead move to add portables to the existing site, I hope you consider how to reconcile this with the, quote, Success Forward 5-year strategic plan, which commits the district to eliminating the use of modular classrooms by 2023. If the board also considers creating separate 6th and 7th, 8th grade school building, I hope you address the growing evidence from education researchers that adding yet another school transition to the pathway will produce large, lasting negative effects on student achievement. Lastly, I hope that at tomorrow's work session, you go on the record rejecting the suggestion that elementary schools be removed from the feeder pattern. So if a decision is not yet reached, we are still able to finally put to rest that part of the conversation within the Dominion community. Thank you.
Ms. Cogan, thank you. Are there clarifying questions from board members for Ms. Cogan? Clarifying question, Mr. Brown.
Excuse me. Thank you for being here. Looking forward to getting at these issues tomorrow. And at least from my perspective, I'm not going to presume anything, but hope that we have a good session to work on these issues. My clarifying question pertains just to the last point that you made. I guess the question is, we've made some very clear statements that we are not in any way going to be closing off or taking elementary schools out of the feeder pattern because of many of the issues that were brought to us. I guess, are you still hearing things even since then?
I mean, maybe not me personally, but there still is some potential rumblings. And I understand that you have, maybe each individually made a comment, maybe, outside of, the board meeting. But from my understanding, there's nothing that's, been officially, like an official statement that's been put out. So if, I don't even know if there's a process to do that or not. But I just think that would help, just pacify the community.
Yeah, I thought that was crystal clear, but thank you.
Board Member Gibbs, have you a clarifying question for Ms. Cogan?
No, Board Member Brown asked my question, and
Okay.
and more than a clarifying statement, there was never a recommendation. So we put it to rest. There's never been anything put forward to that effect from the board. That came out of the community and probably is best resolved in the community because that hasn't come from us, the task force, or anybody. I think it was really one part of the move that, if anything, made us slow down to make sure everyone's very clear about our work and understand that in the absence of our conversation, people created narratives that do not belong to the Board of Education nor the Facilities Task Force. They don't reflect our values. And that on tomorrow, we will take time to ask all of the diligent questions and make sure we're giving our team a direction of the information. We want to come back and consider and make sure we all get the same information at the same time and are asking those questions. So thank you for your continued advocacy on behalf of Dominion, and thank everyone who's come out to do that. But no, to Board Member Brown, I share that concern. We've put that to rest a long time ago.
All right. Board Member Ragland, clarifying question.
Certainly a statement. First of all, thank you, Mrs. Cogan, for joining us today. I do believe, and I want to express the importance of what we are embarking on tomorrow. The only way that we can cut off these types of rumors and innuendo in the community is if we make a definitive statement as a board and really get down to deciding on what we're going to do and move forward with that with certainty. We're seeing, and I'm hearing, from quite a few people in the public, and there will always be rumor and innuendo until we decide what we're doing moving forward. So tomorrow's meeting will be vitally important, and I am hoping that we can start coming to some conclusions on what the task force has recommended for the health and benefit of not only this board, but for our students and their families. Thank you.
All right, if there are no other clarifying questions, Ms. Cogan, thank you for being here this evening. Thank you. Good night. All right, I do not have any other speakers, so thank you to those of you who took the time to come and provide public testimony to the Board of Education. We appreciate it very much. Let's move on then, colleagues, to our interim superintendent and his report. Dr. Stanford, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Board President and members of the Board of Education. I want to start by saying the buses are ready to roll. We are set to have classes tomorrow in Columbus City Schools. As you well know, we were forced to cancel classes for today due to the impact of the prolonged winter bitter cold storm that came through this area and its impact on our bus fleet. Even though our district was closed on Monday for the holiday, our transportation and fleet teams proactively came in and checked all of our buses yesterday, knowing that our fleet had been sitting idle for 3 days in single-digit temperatures. That's when we discovered that more than 140 of our buses would not start. On a normal day with normal temperatures, we would be able to cover such a large number of out-of-service buses by doubling up on our routes. But when you double up on routes, you delay the pickup times at the bus stops by as much as a half hour or more. The waiting period can even be longer in the winter when the road conditions can be a challenge for all drivers on the road, let alone our bus drivers. And we know that temperatures and wind chills would still be in the single digits this morning. And if we are the ones creating long delays that force our young people to stand outside in that kind of weather, that's just not safe and not the best decision for our babies. I'm glad that we made the call last night because our transportation and fleet teams were being proactive in checking the buses yesterday instead of waiting until this morning. We were able to give our families, because they did check yesterday, the time that they would need in advance to notify their daycare keepers and their babysitters and making them aware of what was impending so that they could prepare themselves for the cancellation. By midday today, we were able to make sure through Mr. Oldham and his team that our fleet was up and running again and ready for tomorrow. Fortunately, as we look ahead, there aren't too many 3-day breaks with temperatures forecasted in the single digits for days on end. So today's rare cancellation should remain an anomaly. But you all know Mr. Oldham and Mr. McElroy, they are always looking at every step of our process and procedures to learn if there are better ways to avoid a similar type of situation in the near or long term. And I guarantee you, he's not sleeping well because he doesn't have the exact answers right now. I want to thank our Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Maurice Oldham, and his team, especially Steve McElroy, Gary Bright, Jamal Ford, Steve Andrews, and our entire transportation and fleet teams for their efforts over the last couple of days to make sure that we are going to be ready for school tomorrow. I also want to thank Mr. Oldham and the custodial and buildings and grounds teams as well for working together yesterday and today to make sure that all of our buildings are ready to receive our students in the morning. They have done a tremendous job to make sure that the effects of that storm will not have our buildings unready, but that our buildings will be ready for our students. As you well, yes. As we all know, there was a lot of snow and ice for them to address, and making sure that our walkways are clear, making sure that our parking lots are ready, and making sure that our buildings are ready as well inside. And so again, thank you, Mr. Oldham and your team for the work that you all have done. So to say again, for all of our young people wondering about tomorrow, is it gonna be a school day or is it not? Do I wear my pajamas backwards? Do I put, ice in the, yeah. You can cut it all out. Because yes, we are set to have classes on Wednesday because our buses are ready to roll. The buses are also ready to roll this Saturday morning, January 26th, for the first day of our 8-week Saturday Super Reader Academy initiative. As of this afternoon, we have nearly 600 second and third grade readers signed up for this supercharged academy this weekend. And thank you for doing that because this is such an important initiative for our young people. The Academy is designed to help our young people focus in on mastering the third grade reading skills that will empower them to do well on the third grade reading test and to avoid the mandates of the third grade reading guarantee. We are also offering our second grade students an opportunity to take advantage of this additional learning opportunity to power up on their reading skills in preparation for next year's third grade reading test. So we're not only preparing our students for this year's test, but we're looking ahead and preparing them for next year's test as well. The good news for our families is that it is not too late to sign your child up for a seat in the academy. We have plenty of room still left available at Southwood, Eco Kenwood, East Linden, and Westmount Elementary Schools. Please, parents and families, please sign your child up for this academy. Your child does not have to be behind to sign up for this academy. If your child just wants to get additional help in order to advance their reading skills, this is the time for them to do it. The time to prepare for the test and take advantage of these opportunities to do well are right now. Not when the test is a week away, not when the test is a couple of days away. The time to take advantage of these opportunities is right now. This is an opportunity for your child families to get better at reading. But we need you, our families, to act fast and to act now. Just talk to your child's teacher, or you can go online to our website, www.ccsoh.us, to sign up through the parent portal. I appreciate the help of many of our Board of Education members that have given out notices to remind our second and third grade families of this opportunity. As a show of thanks for sharing those reminders throughout our community, we've given each of you at your places at the board table your own personal Super Reader mask. And this time, we took the glitter off of them so you wouldn't leave a mess on your desk. There's another important reminder that I want to share with our families, and I'm hoping the board can help in spreading this message as well. It affects a significant number of our families who rely upon the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP as it is commonly referred to. It is also commonly referred to as food stamps. Because of the partial federal shutdown, the U.S. Department of Agriculture instructed states across the country to make SNAP payment benefits available starting this past weekend for the month of February. Okay, this is January, and they made the benefits available to them for the month of February. Okay? And so, in other words, some families now have 2 months worth of benefits available to them. And some are wrongly thinking that the money must be spent before the end of January. And that is not the case. In fact, it's just the opposite. And this came to me as I was driving in my car over the weekend, and I heard an announcement from our director of the Franklin County Job and Family Services, Director Joy Bivens, talking about this in a radio ad. The Franklin County Department of Job and Family Services needs the help of us in the community and letting our families all across the county know that those benefits need to last them through the end of February. Let me say that again. These benefits need to last them through the end of February. There are no new dollars coming in the month of February. The SNAP benefits that these families have now must last the next 6 weeks. To help share this reminder, our communications team, through the leadership of Scott Varner, will help repost any messages that come from the Department of Job and Family Services to our families. We will also communicate to our partners in the community to spread this message in their areas of the city as well. This confusion and frustration around SNAP is yet another hardship for our families in our community, caused by the chaos, let me say that one more time, the chaos that is going on with this historic federal shutdown in Washington, D.C. And so if anyone in the audience is listening or in this room is wondering about the impact of this chaotic shutdown on Columbus City schools, let me share that as of right now, the partial shutdown is not impacting our school district operations, okay? This partial shutdown is not impacting our school district operations. Funding from the United States Department of Education has already been approved by Congress, and that the department continues to send federal funds to our district and other districts across the country without disruption. I will now briefly turn over the microphone to Mr. Behort to share his review of the Q Scoobies program that he was also concerned about.
Thank you, Dr. Stanford. At the most recent Finance and Appropriations Committee meeting, we had noted as a variance in our planning the receipt of the interest rate rebate from the federal government for, as Dr. Stanford pointed out, what we affectionately call the Q Scooby program, which is the qualified school construction bonds that are outstanding. And that interest rebate obviously was there to encourage the issuance of those bonds, and what that went towards through this interest rate rebate and lower the cost to the district. That amounts to between $240,000 and $250,000 in this particular payment, and we felt, while the timing varies, we thought, geez, it seems to be a couple months late, and we did inquire with bond counsel about whether or not they had any information as to whether or not this shutdown was going to cause a delay in that further. And while that's not a large dollar amount per se from our cash flow position, it was kind of interesting to see, when would we get it? Is it part of that delay? I think it was within a day or so after that finance meeting, our controller came to me and says, hey, by the way, we got the interest rate rebate. So for however they were looking at that rebate, however they considered it, just to let you know, we did get that check. So from a cash flow standpoint, that's fine. And again, that one wouldn't have necessarily affected us operationally, but that's in, and as Dr. Stanford says, it's now not an issue for us relative to that debt service rebate. Dr. Stanford?
Thank you, Mr. Behort. The other source of funding that we receive from the federal government comes from the Department of Agriculture. And we, through our analysis, feel confident that even the dollars that come to us through the United States Department of Agriculture have yet to be impacted as well by this shutdown, since those reimbursements from the Department of Agriculture are issued on a quarterly basis that runs through the month of March. And thanks to good money management in our food service operations, through the leadership of Mr. Oldham and Mr. Joe Brown, we are comfortable in saying that there will be no impact on our food program this school year. Okay? But if this shutdown drags on longer, then the shadows of doubt will begin to loom longer for efforts such as our summer food program. As you all know, our summer food program is a partnership with the City of Columbus, which relies upon federal dollars to provide nutritious meals to our vulnerable young families and students at hundreds of sites all across this city. And so I know Mr. Brown is in contact with the city and watching this situation very closely. And if the threats of dragging this shutdown for several months become real, then we may be faced with a lot of different challenges that we just don't know right now. It is too early to say what those challenges may be because the impact will be driven by the facts at that time. But let me make this one point very clear. As a board, this body made the historic commitment in 2014 to provide every student in Columbus City Schools with a nutritious breakfast and a healthy lunch every day at no charge. And I just want the board to know, even if the stalemate in Washington cannot be overcome in any time soon, and the funding that we rely on from Washington is held back going into the next school year, the administration will do everything that we can with your help to fulfill our commitment to the children of this district and to the families of this community. Because we still believe that hunger should not be a barrier to the academic success of our children. And we know that many of our students, if they do not eat a breakfast and lunch at school, they may have a difficult time eating at night at home. And so that meal at breakfast and lunch provides a critical stopgap for them to be able to make it through the week. Again, we do not foresee any impact to the food service program this school year because of the federal shutdown, but we hope those in Washington, D.C. realize who is being impacted the most when federal funding is held hostage to political gains. Far too often, it is our most vulnerable citizens of this nation, not those who are being politically motivated to keep this shutdown going. Finally, tonight, and in perfect complement to our conversations about our community's most vulnerable families, I want to spend a very few brief moments updating this board on the Franklin County Poverty Assessment and Strategic Plan process. I've been honored to sit on the project steering committee representing this district. The steering committee is made up of community leaders from all backgrounds and various disciplines, including faith leaders, academics, social workers, executives, community activists, and even residents of our city who have lived in poverty themselves. In addition to analyzing the current dimensions of poverty that are unique to our community, we have looked at an accounting of resources available locally and the creation of a community-wide plan to marshal those resources in the most efficient and effective way in a collective effort to achieve the most benefit for each of those dollars being used for our families. The preliminary goals at this time revolve around 4 key areas: health, jobs, housing, and youth. And in many cases, the suggested preliminary strategies target unique needs within our schools. Among those strategies for addressing poverty's impact on student health are a focus on young expecting mothers, including additional supports in our schools with higher teen pregnancy rates, and a renewed effort on tobacco cessation aimed at our teenagers. Under the draft strategies for creating more job opportunities, the group is considering proposals to expand programs that support job readiness and interviewing skills, and a proposal to expand and subsidize on-site and integrated childcare. Proposed solutions on housing could possibly include a proposition to develop and pass a countywide bond issue to implement affordable housing strategies and create a local housing funding source. And finally, the steering committee has devoted a whole series of proposed strategies centered on young people, including a call to expand the use of schools as family and community resource centers, expanding early college and dual credit opportunities for our students, expand the training in de-escalation techniques and bystander response, and finally, encouraging a countywide policy for employers to allow a parent to take leave of work to volunteer in their child's school. At this time, there are no formal recommendations or a report to share with the board. I will, however, be sharing with the board some of the preliminary documents that were shared at our recent meeting after this meeting. As we get closer to the end of this process, I look forward to providing more information to the Board of Education so that this district can be a part of the ongoing efforts to address poverty in our community. More so, we as a district should look forward to a commitment from a larger part of our countywide community to support our young people and to help their families to deal with the trappings of poverty and to find a true and lasting pathway to a better life. With that, Mr. President and members of the Board of Education, I conclude my report this evening.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions for the superintendent? Yes, Board Member Reyes?
Thank you, Dr. Stanford. I don't know if this is much of a question, so I'm a member of the food pantry network due to my job. In addition to the message of letting our families know that they received January and February, is letting them know that it is uncertain if they will receive March. So we made sure that we're communicating that. And then secondly, letting them know that most food pantries have stocked up or added either slots, additional food, especially the Middle Ohio Food Bank has made sure that they have ample food in case people need to go, and are encouraging people, if you need help to make those services expand a little bit, to make sure that they take advantage of food pantries. There are food pantries in the city that do carry meats, so chicken and beef and things like that. So making sure that our families are aware that there are additional resources for them from a food pantry perspective if they want to make sure that they can supplement that income.
Mr. President, to Ms. Reyes, thank you very, very much. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that we can get a list of those pantries throughout the city from the Middle Ohio Food Bank?
Yes, and it's very easy for any family to have access to any food pantry. They just have to call 211. Just very similar, like if you're calling 911, you call 211 for emergency services. Actually, 211 not only helps you get an appointment at a food pantry, it can help you in these frigid temperatures if you are found homeless, or all the other things that may come as a result of the shutdown if you can't pay your rent, things like that. There are operators at that number that can help and assist you in directing you to resources that can provide you assistance for rent, for shelters, especially during these frigid colds, family shelters, diapers, anything that an individual may need, a resident may need. Again, it's just very simple, 211. There's a longer number, but 211 is a lot easier to remember.
Mr. President, Ms. Red, you said 211?
211.
211.
211.
211.
Don't call 911, call 211.
Call 211.
Yes, very easy.
Questions? Board Member Brown.
Thank you. And no, I'm not going to talk about the Poverty Task Force. I have confidence that that task force will do a good job and be helpful in this community. But you described pretty well the direct impacts that the shutdown is having on our schools. And I appreciate that, and I feel better knowing that at least direct impact is not going to be a problem for us this school year. But indirect impact, I wanted to ask you if you're able to comment. A lot of our families have somebody in federal employment. We have a lot of federal employees in Columbus, and as a result, I'm sure, I have no doubt that we're having indirect impact in that way. Students that are having more difficulty because of their situations at home. What steps, if any, are we taking and could we take to be helpful to those families in particular?
Mr. President, to Mr. Brown, that is a very, very good question. And, you know, we do have Cheryl Ward on our team who is well equipped with our social work team to work with those families. And what I would encourage anyone in our school district who may be having this sort of impact because they are employed by the federal government and they are looking for resources or assistance or connections to those resources, to definitely give our office a call, and we will put them in touch. And that number is 614-365-5888. Again, that is 614-365-5888. They can also call our customer service hotline or customer relations, which is 614-365-8888. And we will certainly put them in connect, because it's sad to say, but that type of ongoing work to connect people in need with the resources in our community to address those needs is the ongoing work of Ms. Ward and her team, her social work team. And so I'm confident that they already have the ability to address those needs, but we can have a more extensive conversation, especially if this continues to drag out, how we can be more proactive in seeking out people as opposed to waiting for them to come to us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Dr. Stanford, what would be the obstacle to using our app to share that type of information proactively with our students and their families? You look at the enthusiasm with which people responded to us being out of school today. There were a lot of people who spread that message very quickly through our app. Could we be proactive? I know that Mr. Varner is going to be working with Franklin County, doing some things you mentioned earlier. But as we have resources, potentially with the food pantries and some of the other things like Board Member Brown has mentioned, could we use this opportunity to spread more information if there are obstacles to that? Could you explain some of those to me, please?
Mr. Baker, to Mr. Ragland, I took a quick turn over my shoulder, and Mr. Varner was shaking his head in agreement that there probably are no barriers, but I'd like him to come up and really speak to it more authoritatively than I can.
President Baker, to Board Member Ragland, yes. I mean, part of what our commitment was when Dr. Stanford approached us to help us share this important message was to utilize the great resources that you've given us to spread the message. As you mentioned, when we put out messages, they spread pretty quickly, as we saw with our message late last night. Within just a couple of hours, we had 50, 60,000 responses. So we know that when important messages go out from the district, we're able to put them out through all of our resources. So we will fully utilize all of those to make sure that we are providing that information. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Just a few things. That was quite a robust report, but I just want to touch on a few things. First, back to the buses. And this is one of very few times that our buses don't start. Do we know if it was because they needed to be jumped, or were there any additional mechanical issues?
Mr. Baker, to Ms. Gibbs, that's what we're looking into. We don't think it's anything seriously mechanically with our buses. You have to understand that our buses are all diesel engines. And so in this type of cold weather, that diesel fuel becomes more jelly-like than sort of free-flowing fuel. We also were in conversation today about how even the oil that is recommended for our buses to use also has a hard time in this type of weather. But those are the type of things that Mr. Oldham and Mr. McElroy are taking a deeper look at, just to make sure that there is not anything going on the county. As of right now, we feel pretty comfortable that nothing mechanical is going on, but that, just the nature of this freeze being over the 2 or 3 days, and the fact that we had a long weekend may have been the factors that came together to create that situation.
Well, thank you for that, and I think you were amazing. But had every single one of our buses started today, the conditions of the street, all of our streets, I would have still questioned whether or not we should have opened today. And we were together over the weekend. Even our major thoroughfares were not cleared. They don't get the side streets. They're not priority one, but Broad Street was not clear. Nelson Road was not clear at 5 p.m. And so even if every single one of them would have turned on, our challenge is that many of our buses go down our residential streets, are not priority one, are priority 4s and 5s. And when they're not clear, that also causes a big challenge for us. And so for that, I would say I was doubly thankful, because I thought the conversation was around road conditions. And we're still hoping that those get better. And because of that, even though it's going to rain tomorrow and we know they're going to school, we still need to shovel our sidewalks. Otherwise, our kids are walking in the street. And walking in the street with half rain, half snow, half ice can still be very dangerous. So I want to make sure that we asked our public to still help us with that. My shovel went down. I had to get a new shovel, to help, snow. And if y'all want to make money, buy a shovel, because there were people paying triple time this weekend to take away that driveway snow.
Mr. Baker, to Ms. Gill, I just want to add on to that comment. We always, in these type of situations, are in constant contact with the city's snow warriors. And, they had a very difficult challenge this weekend because the forecast was that it was going to start snowing on Friday, and then, go through Saturday morning, then stop for a while, and then start back up again Saturday night and go into Sunday morning. Whereas we all know it just rained all day Saturday. And so as I drove around Saturday going to these different events that we were at, you saw the trucks standing, sitting on the side of the road, just ready to go. Right?
It's ready to go,
salt
too.
and everything, just ready to go. And, and so they had a difficult challenge with this particular storm that came through Central Ohio. And they did a great job of, getting the major fairways and highways, cleared and ready to go. And so, with these type of storms, it puts a strain on all of us. On all of us. And,
it does.
It's only when we work together in partnership that we can then, overcome these type of challenges.
Absolutely. So we do thank our snow warriors, but there's just more flakes than there are of them. Yeah. There's just more streets than there are of them, and we do have to stay in constant contact. The second is on the shutdown, and when you then have a long weekend, and if you have any teenagers, or I've seen elementary kids put down a whole pack of hot dogs, and you have these extra day at home, and you're spending more on groceries and all of those items. We also, to your point, Board Member Reyes, have to be considerate of that. But there are people who's out of work every day, shut down or not. And so I also want to encourage us to provide resources to your whole poverty simulation. This is there every day, right? The poverty simulation is there every day. And so as people think about how they can support us, I hope they do call us on the 365-5888. And while we receive a lot of food assistance in Columbus, Columbus is an amazing, caring community, and they'll provide you with food and shelter and housing, but you might not get dish detergent or other items, or laundry soap or other things that you need to make your house function. So if there's any volunteer groups that want to find a school or elementary school, we actually have washers and dryers in our schools, and they actually take care of our students. So if you want to drop off some Tide or some Gain, I know every school in our district will take a pair of gloves, a hat, and a scarf, and socks right now. You don't have to do nothing, but you could just set it right at the front desk and walk out. They'll be glad they can wash it right there and put it to work. So just there are more ways you can volunteer and don't feel like you have to go through a huge bureaucratic system to help and support, because we need help all day, every day. Because for our students and some of their families, every day is a shutdown. And we really need to help refocus them and for them to get support. My last question and comment is around the weekend surge. 2 questions. Are we able to accommodate students with special needs and ESL on our Saturday workshops? And what is our capacity and how many more kids can we sign up?
President Baker, to Board Member Gibbs' questions. Our capacity, let's start there, 840 students. And right now, we're hovering around 630-ish. Right now, we have, yes, we can accommodate our students with special needs and our ELL students. Our current numbers, we have approximately 80 students with IEPs, and we need more because that capacity, once again, is 840, and we're hovering around 630-ish, and we have 105 ELL students already enrolled. And we are looking to bust the cap on that 840. If we have parents and the sound of my listening voice with children, 2nd and 3rd graders, and we want to get them prepared, literacy, literacy, literacy. Our Super Reader Academy starts next week, and it runs through March 16th. And we are open, we will be open and ready for business. So transportation will be provided. We have 7 sites, and 7 sites around the city of Columbus. That includes Columbus Spanish Immersion, that includes Echo Kenwood, that includes Westmount, Old Orchard, Southwood, and East Linden. Once again, transportation is provided, and the buses start rolling next Saturday for our Super Reader Academy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillison. Thank you, Dr. Stanford.
Any other questions for the superintendent colleagues? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Very good report. Let's move on then to our internal auditor. Madam Internal Auditor, have you a report for the board this evening?
Thank you, President Baker. I do not have a report, but I do have one announcement. Audit and Accountability will be meeting this Thursday at 3:30 in the Cabinet Room. Thank you.
All right, any questions for the internal auditor? Very good. Mr. Treasurer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Baker, members of the board. This evening, my presentation is on the monthly financial report for the month of December. This report was reviewed by the Finance and Appropriations Committee last Wednesday, the 16th. And at that meeting, we had quite a full complement. We had all the members of the committee there save for one vacancy. We had President Baker serve as acting chair to run the meeting. And then our visitors there included Board Member Ragland and I think earlier that day, sworn-in Board Member Adair. So we had quite a complement. And I don't know whether it was the crowd or not, but that was the fastest meeting on record, because I think it lasted approximately 27 minutes. Not that we didn't get into all the details, but it was very efficiently run. Maybe we'll just leave it at that. So, but this is the monthly report for December. This is getting somewhat repetitive in saying that revenues are up versus plan and expenditures are down. On the revenue side, month to date, they came in about $2.3 million above plan, driving the year-to-date variance up to $23.5 million above plan, which is about a 5% variance. Expenditures this month came in about 3.7 under plan, driving the year-to-date variance to 6.7 million, or about 1.5% below plan. All in all, that drove the cash balance to be about 30 million more than what was anticipated in the original plan. Looking at the major categories of revenue on the property tax side, again, no activity in December. That will pick up this month. We've already received one advance. At your organizational meeting, you approved that resolution that we can request advances. I believe tax bills were due today, maybe, I think sometime this week. So that period, as far as the payment of taxes is closed, and they'll be in the process of making advances to us, and the county auditor's office then getting prepared to make settlement to us, which we expect by March. So you'll see some activity in next month's report relative to property taxes. State aid this month came in very, very close on plan, 700,000 above plan on about 31 million in revenue. So we were spot on there. Year to date, we're at about 2.8 million or 1.6 above plan. I went through some of the details of what's going on behind the scenes there, and some minor increases in the calculation that drove the cap up just a little bit. But we believe that 2.8 to 3 million above plan should hold for the balance of the year. I think much of our time was spent talking about other revenues. And that's a 13 million above plan year to date. And when we broke that down into these categories, first of all, on the left-hand side there, you'll see restricted federal grants and the 250,000, that very small sliver of plan. That was what I mentioned earlier in terms of the federal monies coming in. So that tiny, tiny piece is we're good to go on that one. No activity on property tax allocation. But really what jumps out here is the 13 million is largely attributable to other revenues in this category. And with the committee, I delved into that variance, which I'll do here in a minute later on when I talk about some of the other variances and how I'm trying to put that in context. When we moved on to expenditures, personnel returned to running under plan this past month. Heretofore in November was a 3-pay month, and I talked about that being somewhat underestimated. And so those variances were more an issue with how we laid out the plan month to month. But the return to running under plan at about 3 million this month under plan. Charter schools were dead on when it comes to that deduction, and I'll look at a breakdown of other expenditures here in a minute. Relative to personnel, I did share with the committee this graph. It simply shows the monthly variances and the impact it has on year to date, and you can see there that for the month of November there was a fairly large over planned variance, which brought us closer to being on plan, and now that we've returned to running under plan, we see that then climbing in on a year-to-date basis. I wanted to remind everyone, as I did the committee, that we have already planned into the forecast, the October 5-year forecast, about 9.8 million, 10 million or so in under plan in this category. So that's already been, we knew that that would probably come in that way, and so we factor that in to the October forecast. So we'll continue to watch this, but we do expect it to run under plan for the balance of the year. When we look at non-personnel expenditures, the one item that we spent some time talking to the committee about was purchase services. It's under plan again this month, and I've identified primarily the areas of tuition and some utilities that are running under plan. Those two are both pretty much out of our control, and so it's good that we have to budget adequately for that. So coming in under there is, you know, we have a plan, but we also plan to come in under. We want to be adequate there, if that makes any sense at all. So being under in purchase services at this point is very much a good thing and not not anything that is alarming to us. I did spend some time with the committee in talking about variances and trying to put them in context, and I do that in two formats. One is graphically, and another is in a table format. But this is something I shared on the revenue side, is what this depicts. The gold bars being the actual dollar amount of variance, and the blue bars being the percentage. So you can see that you might be high dollar amount but a low percentage, or a low dollar amount but a high percentage. And I'm trying to get the committee to focus in on which variances are important to, to pursue and have the biggest impact. Of my own doing, I chose a benchmark, if you will, or a cutoff point in determining what's high and what's low in terms of dollar amount and variances. So I think it's not shown on this graph, but we look at 5 million or more as a high dollar variance, or 5% or more as a high variance percentage, and then I categorize the various categories of sources of revenue. And you can see in property taxes, it's a high variance amount, but it's a very low percentage in the overall planned amount. And really, the only thing that jumps out here is the all other revenue category. It's a high variance and a high percentage, which we wanted to delve into a little bit further. I also list here the percentage contribution of each one of those sources to the overall budget. So again, if we focus in on all of the revenues, keep in mind that that's only about 2% of our overall revenue. So I'm just trying to put it in context to give you some, I don't want to say severity, but how much focus, how important is it, what kind of impact might this have if some of these variances maintain, and if we hone in on this, how much closer can we get? So we did get into other revenues, and I explained to the committee that 13 million variance year to date is broken down into these three factors. One, the 3.7 million in Medicaid reimbursement, simply a timing issue. We received it early. We never know when it's going to come, so I basically in the plan pick them up. And then if it comes in, great. If it doesn't, I know it's going to come in later. The other two line items, I'm going to talk about the last one, the 3.4 million in investment income. Again, we're fairly conservative there, so we don't want to be very aggressive. Don't know what interest rates might be doing, but we do have a very good investment program. We're about 3.4 million up there. The key, though, at this committee meeting was to talk about the pilots, the payment in lieu of taxes. That's up. That's the biggest contributor at 6.1 million. And so I went back to the plan to share with the committee what did we assume, what's the history, and what did we assume in the plan when we put it together. Again, starting at the bottom, working our way up, you can see the history of the win-win payments. They began dwindling here in the last couple of years, the last couple of fiscal years, because, as you know, the win-win payments are, and those agreements are winding down. So really, you can see it went from 4.7 in 17 to 3.1 in 18. We're anticipating that to be 2.1 this year, and we don't receive those payments until May or June timeframe. When we look at revenue sharing is with the City of Columbus as part of some of the tax instrument financing deals that are out there. We do get some revenue sharing there. That has averaged about 1.8 million a year. That seems a pretty reasonable plus or minus number. We had 2 million in there. So relative to the plan, I think we had pretty good numbers for those two categories to put into the plan. Pilots are something completely different. You can see this. They seem to somewhat almost be all over the board. There is a pattern there every 3 years. You can see 2016, 2019. Every 3 years there tends to be a spike. And one would have to say that that correlates to reappraisal or the triennial update. And you can also see that we averaged about 4.4 million over that time period, and we had about 2 million in the plan. So one of the things we're talking about is now that we know this, should we have a more cyclical pattern in our 5-year forecast for this, and should we bump it up a bit? So if we were to bump it up and say just put in the average, put in 4 million, pick up 2 million a year. Over the 5-year period, it'd be about $10 million added into estimated revenue for the forecast. So $10 million is a fairly large amount of money, but again, in the overall scheme of our budget, again, I'm putting that in perspective. Remember, this isn't an area where it's less than 2% of our overall income on a $980 million budget. But still, this type of tweaking and this discussion and getting the details is what we do at FAC. Well, when we get into the expenditure side of variances, again, same graph, orange bars being the dollar amount, blue bars being the percent variance. And you can see that there are some fairly large percent variances, but in very small dollar amounts. And again, when I put it in a table format, you can see here which ones I think are important to take a look at. Generally, if you get two highs, high amount and high variance, you probably want to take a look at that, but we don't have that combination here in in the expenditure side. And you'll see that for about 87% of our expenditures in terms of the overall budget, that would be personnel and charter schools. 87% of that, we're pretty much, we're very close in terms of the plan. So I talked to you about personnel before. We monitor that very closely. We have an idea of where that will end the year. So all in all, I think that this is a pretty good idea to focus our attention and where we need to look into a little bit more detail. And so far, I think the committee's received this variance analysis fairly well. So In closing, I don't see anything that's alarming in our variances and in our report year-to-date, but as has been in the past, revenues are above plan, expenditures are below plan. We've got about 30 million more in cash, and I will, in the next couple of months, be doing two things. Probably here very soon, start on the May update to the 5-year forecast. That is going to be kind of an outgrowth of our budget process, and then presented to FAC in April for board approval in May. And I'll be beginning that. And then I'll also look to do a projection for how we're going to end this fiscal year based upon having 6 to 7 months under our belt. We'll get a pretty good idea of what we can look forward out to the end of the year, and that'll be part of what we factor into the forecast as well as we prepare the May update. I think that pretty well covers that meeting, unless you have something you'd like to add, President Baker, but that concludes my report on the December financial statement.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Your report was almost as long as the meeting, but you covered a lot. Thank you very much. Very well said.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions from board members for the Treasurer, Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just two questions. One, on the revenue sharing slide, that was, I think, maybe 3 previous. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, does that revenue sharing, is that income tax with the city?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we yield about 1.8 million, just short of 2 million a year on income tax revenue sharing. Okay. In any of those assumptions or any previous assumptions, are we including matured tax abatement? Are we taking into account revenues that may come in as a result of matured tax abatement?
Yes, sir, we are. There isn't necessarily a specific line item for that, but we generally look at tax settlement periods and then inflate those over time, and that factors that piece in there. We do have a schedule of those that we get from the county auditor, and I'm pretty confident that what we do just in terms of trending those settlement periods takes that into account. So the answer to that is yes, we do, and to the extent that we're real close on the property tax line at the end of the year, that would be, kind of proof of the pudding that we've counted those in.
Okay, so you'll include those in your assumptions in the upcoming?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions for the Treasurer? Thank you, Mr. Treasurer, very much for your report.
Thank you.
Let's move on, colleagues, to our consent agenda. Is there a motion that we approve it as presented?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on any pieces of legislation contained within the consent agenda this evening. Let me ask, is anyone from the Columbus Board of Realtors here with us this evening? Okay, very good. Well, if there's no discussion, I was just going to thank CBR for a donation of $2,500. And we had invited someone to be here from CBR, but they were apparently unable to join us. So we want to encourage that type of behavior. If there's nothing else related to the consent agenda, Mr. Treasurer, you may call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs? Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes? Ms. Adair?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you. Colleagues, have any of you any very brief announcements or points of pride you might like to share this evening? Mr. Ragland, I believe your hand was up first.
Thank you. For those of you who are not attending the Super Readers program this weekend, on this Saturday, the 26th, we will meet at Dominion Middle School at 9:30 to have a real conversation with James Ragland and a few other friends. So Ms. Dottie Flanagan, our wonderful, wonderful school leader at Dominion, has opened up her doors for us to come in and just hear from the community about whatever it is you would like to discuss with the board member. And so I'm looking forward to the conversation at Dominion. Thank you, President Baker.
I'll share, Mr. Ragland, that Vice President Cole and Ms. Gibbs and I are unable to participate. We would if we could. We'll be in Washington participating in the National School Board Association Equity Symposium and Advocacy Institute on behalf of the district. So your other colleagues may join you. We look forward to hearing the report.
You will certainly be missed.
Thank you. Ms. Gibbs.
Hey, there we go. So just a few highlights of like an amazing weekend. Those are the Columbus Police Department Explorer Program. Thank you, Director Johnson. They are absolutely amazing. Behind you see are Briggs and Akai students and 3 young ladies who were at Columbus East High School yesterday. The Explorer Program is looking to expand and have some amazing work coming up. That is Officer Andrew Drake, COS 91, who is leading the Explorer program now. You remember Officer Jackson, who used to be at a lot of our events, but Officer Drake was very glad to be back in his district. This is the middle and high school fair. It was cold and it was packed. And there were families, oh, there's Dottie. There were families there that were looking at all types of options. That is the Mifflin Bulldog with Mifflin Middle School Principal Tracy Kosin. But all of our middle and high schools had amazing displays. The principals were out doing amazing things. At the CEA dinner, this young man sang, "Lift Every Voice and Sing." He is, he's at Fort Hays, and I just scribbled his name. He is on his way to Jackson State. But when I tell you he rocked it at the CEA dinner, he was absolutely amazing. And so we were able to see him. And they honored Dr. Joshua Joseph, who's an endocrinologist, the gentleman in the middle, who's COS 99. I can't make this up. Like, I didn't just pick all COS people. They just happened to be there. His wife is a neurologist. But he is doing amazing work with diabetes research. And he comes out of, like, I think he said Woolworth Park. He went to middle school. And he went to school in the district all of his life. And so he's back at Ohio State and excited to give back to the community. I have your picture from the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority luncheon. They give thousands of dollars in scholarships through the Scholars Tea to Columbus City School students, and they recognize all of our students that are there. That's Miss Seneca Bing, who's a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. Miss Brianna Walker spoke at, this is the City of Columbus MLK celebration at East High School yesterday. She was amazing, and she talked about Dorothy and the power of Dorothy. Y'all have to watch that. And Mr. Playon Patrick, did y'all see him at the breakfast yesterday?
Where's he from?
He is from Fort Hays, Mr. Ragland. He is from Fort Hays, representing very well, just an amazing, amazing presentation and amazing young man. So those were just some highlights of some great weekend events. There was also a Zeta Phi Beta luncheon, and they have graciously donated through I Know I Can a $40,000 founder scholarship that is going to be matched by Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, who is also donating a $40,000 scholarship to Columbus City School students. So just, I think, a round of applause to kind of all of them and all of the work that our team did, because those are just some pictures of me, but there were Columbus City School staff everywhere. I got a picture of you. I saw you at the AK luncheon, Ms. Cheryl Ward, many members of our staff are members of a lot of Greek and civic organizations, and they really did support our students. So thank you, President Baker. It was awesome.
Thank you very much. And that's just one weekend of some of the amazing things that are happening in Columbus City Schools. So next time you read or someone talks to you about how Columbus City Schools is a failing district, tell them about some of the facts about Columbus City Schools, because we are not a failing district, and our students and teachers and other staff are not failing. They're doing a great job every day. And I hope to see some of those things in the local media. Any other announcements or points of pride? Board Member Adair.
I'm so excited. This is the part of the meeting that I love, because we get to highlight our great schools and teachers. So I wanted to say congratulations to the Fort Hays Metropolitan Singers, who performed at the State of Ohio MLK commemorative celebration, and they sang in front of the Lieutenant Governor and the Attorney General and a lot of our state departments, and they did an amazing job representing our district. At that same event, we had a student from Clintonville who actually was a winner of the state MLK oratorical contest, Adonia Balquez, who represented her school, her family, and gave the most powerful speech that had the adults stand up, and in fact, at the conclusion, the Napoleon Bell, who was doing the announcement, referred to her as Senator because she was so good. And so I'm so proud of our students. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to the North Linden Elementary School PTA, who put on a really great reading program and brought families in to the school. They brought their blankets and pillows, and they had a family reading night. So congratulations to the North Linden Elementary School PTA. I didn't know we did pictures, so next time,
Next
I'll bring
time.
pictures.
Next time. Any other brief announcements or brief points of pride? Hearing none, thank you very much. Mr. Superintendent.
Just real briefly, Mr. President, members of the board, Ms. Gibbs has already kind of mentioned the job that Playon Patrick did at the breakfast yesterday morning. And I don't think I heard you say Bianca Moore. Bianca Moore, yeah, who is a sophomore at one of our high schools. I know. I wasn't sure we were supposed to say the name of the school.
Yes.
Yes, Eastmore.
Yeah, that's right.
EA, we know, we know.
And they both just did a fabulous job. Miss Moore is just a sophomore. And Mr. Patrick, that was his fourth breakfast in having, won the contest to represent the district there. And it's just my humble opinion that both of them did a better job than the guests from Morehouse College. Just me. But they both did an amazing job. And so just so very, very proud of the choirs that were there singing from the district. Just beautiful, beautiful.
For sharing that. Again, just amazing success stories. It's that spirit of success that we see all throughout the district and would like to see reflected more in the local media. And hopefully that will happen someday. If there are no other announcements or points of pride, I will call on the Vice President to offer a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session per Section 121.22 Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment or compensation of a public employee.
So we have a motion and a second, and that's Section 121.22G1 of Ohio Revised Code, moved and seconded. Discussion? Mr. Treasurer?
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs? Yes. Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes? Yes. Ms. Adair? Yes. President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown? Yes. That motion carried.
Thank you. The board will now recess into executive session. We will adjourn from those chambers without returning to these. Have a good evening, stay warm, and be safe.